Human trafficking is a $35 billion industry worldwide, and the greatest example we have today of modern slavery. 2.4 million people worldwide and 17,500 in the US only are being smuggled across borders every year and traded as a part of human trafficking related operations. Human trafficking is one of the largest worldwide problems, second in scope only to the drug and arms trade, according to the European Parliament by the Special Committee on Organized Crime, Corruption and Money Laundering. I have read and researched regarding human trafficking as I personally find it very interesting and I wish to work within human rights in the future. Towards the end of this speech, you will gain a broad perspective of the issues with human trafficking from a social, political, and human rights perspective. You will also understand that poverty is a corresponding problem to human trafficking that needs to be dealt with effectively in order to prevent human trafficking from happening in the future. You will also learn what you as an individual can contribute with to fight against this. Firstly, I'm going to introduce you to the human trafficking industry. Then I will introduce you to some survivor stories and the idea that human trafficking and poverty are corresponding problems. Lastly, I will give you the tools that you need that you as an individual can use to fight against human trafficking. According to the Central Intelligence Agency and State Department, approximately 17,500 women are smuggled into the US annually as a part of human trafficking operations. Human trafficking is a $35 billion industry, according to a recent report presented by the European Parliament by the Special Committee on Organized Crime, Corruption and Money Laundering. The crime syndicate behind the smuggling is a network of mafia cells and complicit members of law enforcement connected across the world, second in scope only to the drug and arms trade. In 2007, an article in the December issue of IRIN, the UN news service, stated that Italy was the key destination for trafficked women and girls. The sex trade has been booming since the 1980s, when organized criminal syndicates in Europe began preying on economic migrants seeking opportunities abroad. Experts says that trafficking is only getting worse. State Department was interviewing Deputy Chief of the Italian Embassy, Antonio Purini. He had trouble articulating the issue of human trafficking. He said that they were having a real difficult problem in Italy that they didn't know how to solve, but it had to do with women who were being brought to Europe from Africa and they were being prostituted. Women from Nigeria and Ethiopia in particular were being taken from their homes either by force or by trickery. Once in Italy, an ideal transit point for smugglers due to its mile of coastlines, women are being raped and drugged. IOM reports child trafficking and labor trafficking numbers are rising. Child victims of human trafficking, helped by the IOM, increased to 2,040 in 2011, up by 27% from 2008, according to new IOM data. Now that you know the magnitude of human trafficking, I will introduce you to the social side of the problem and share some of the survivors' personal stories. The first story that I'm going to share with you is from a male porter that was witnessing a repeated gang rape of two young men. And this is according to a June 2012 report by the Casting Women's Association. On the third night, the senior officers started to rape the two girls. They were raped for the whole night and were passed on from place to place among the men. I saw they could hardly walk the next morning. One girl cried and came out from the army barracks, and another girl looked very weak and leaned over a tree. The second witness story I am going to read is from a book called School for Rape. A Karen woman describes her rape by a government soldier. I was kept as a porter in October. They said it would only be for 4 days, but they kept me for 1 month and 4 days. At night, I couldn't sleep because I often saw guards come and take the youngest girls away. 2 times I had to carry separately from the rest of the group and ended up alone in the forest with the soldiers at night. Both times the soldiers came to me and beat me, showed me their guns to keep me quiet, and then they raped me. The first time I was raped by 6 soldiers, and the second night this happened, I was raped by 4 soldiers. The third survivor story I'm going to read for you is from CNN. CNN interviewed a survivor named Jasmina in 2008. She was 19 when the war broke out, and she was raped and tortured in her own home alongside with family members. Every day we were raped. The men from my family were beaten up the first day. My mother just disappeared. I never found out what happened to her. Then they started torturing me. I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was totally naked and covered in blood, and my sister in law was also naked and covered in blood. I knew I had been raped, and my sister in law too. In a corner, she saw her mother in law holding her children and crying. That same day, we were locked in our house. That was the worst period of my whole life. That's when it started. Every day we were raped, not only in the house. They would also take us to the front line for the soldiers to torture us. Then again in the house, in front of the children. I was in such bad condition that sometimes I couldn't even recognize my own children. Even though I was in a very bad physical condition, they had no mercy at all. They raped me every day. They took me to the soldiers and back to that house. The only conversation we had was when I was begging them to kill me. That's when they laughed. Their response was, "We don't need you dead." It lasted for a year, every day. Not all the women survived. CNN reported that Jasmina was accused by a family friend was rescued by a family friend who brought her as a prostitute with the secret intention of setting her free. Now that you learned about the horrifying reality for the women that being traded in this industry, I will introduce you to an interesting solution perspective to the human trafficking problem and what you as an individual can do to contribute. Poverty has to be effectively dealt with in order to solve the human trafficking problem. The article "Abduction of Schoolgirls" highlight Nigeria's booming sex trafficking industry from the website Women Under Siege Project makes a significant statement saying that human trafficking in West Africa will not be eradicated until widespread poverty is effectively dealt with. This is an important factor to consider as the victim of the industry usually lives under extremely poor circumstances, where their family doesn't have any means to try to bring them back or prevent this from happening in the first place. Many families may even sell their wives and children to human trafficking voluntarily due to the poor situations, desperate to bring food to the table. For conclusions, human trafficking seems to have merged out from slavery and is mostly widespread throughout poor countries across the world, with West Africa topping these statistics. Poverty seems to be a parallel to effectively deal with before we can solve the human trafficking problem. The website humantrafficking.org provides suggestions to how you can recognize human trafficking victims and operations and whom to report to. Now that I've introduced you to the human trafficking industry, please take time to visit humantrafficking.org and read up on how to recognize human trafficking related operation and help fight towards a world free from slavery. Human trafficking is a $35 billion industry where 2.4 million people are being traded every year. Human trafficking is the greatest example we have today of modern slavery, where actual human beings are being traded as goods. To effectively deal with human trafficking, poverty has to be dealt with firstly. Now that you know more about this industry, please remember that it's our responsibility as individuals to contribute to end human trafficking by sharing the knowledge. Knowledge through empowerment is the most effective way to deal with this problem. Don't be silent and speak up if you suspect human trafficking related operations and you may contribute to save lives. Thank you so much.